Good afternoon, everyone. Bobby Cleveland, Executive Director of the Oklahoma Corrections Professionals, along with Representative J.J. Humphrey. J.J. Humphrey,
Yes,
I
sir.
think that we need to hit the ball, hit the ground running today because we got a lot to talk about.
We
But
do.
there's, there's some the way it went on Monday. I want to talk a little bit about that. To start off with, when you sent the emails out to everyone that you wanted to have attend, most everybody cooperated with you, talked to you about it a couple of times, see what you wanted, how they could help, etc. Would that be correct?
Bob, everybody that we had there was 100% cooperative. We had people drive from Arkansas at their own expense. Ole Miss there, the AGs, the Attorney General's there, was no problem. Contacted me multiple times to make sure who would come, what time, all of that kind of thing. So yeah, great cooperation with most of the witnesses.
Okay, but DLC never did tell you get back and say yes, we're going to be there. Yes, we're going to bring the witness you're asked for, right?
Well, here's the deal. I suspected that we was probably going to have some problems there. So I went and pulled up a law that says that we can actually subpoena them. We do have subpoena power. I sent a request to subpoena them to the Speaker's office because we had to use their legal team to do the subpoenas. Speaker brought me in and said, hey, would you just ask them to come instead of subpoenaing them? I said, I will, but I don't think they'll cooperate. So I wrote a letter over to them saying, hey, here's the two witnesses I'd like you to show up. I need them there at, I forget what the time was, like 2:30, Bob. And never got a response, never got a, hey, yeah, we'll be there. No, we won't. Went back to the Speaker's office and said, I'd like to subpoena them, but never got it done.
But they came, they got your email.
They came. Several of the leadership, the director, and some of the hierarchy of the Department of Corrections showed up. They had one of my witnesses that I requested, which is going to be their general counsel, which is their lawyer, and the other one that did all of these rape investigations and investigated whether Warden Breslin was using alcohol. Did we have a staff member that was assaulted? These kind of things are inmates being held past their discharge date. So he's the one that looked into all of that. Naturally, that would be one of the most key witnesses that we needed for the day for him to offset everything we heard. We heard witness after witness say he hadn't done his job. We heard witness after witness say, that there was this stuff going on. People were confessing, that there was more than just confessing. They had letters to show that there's sex between inmates and staff. They had a confession. Why wasn't that taken to the DAs? Again, he could have answered that. He could have, said, here's why I did this. Here's why I didn't do this. But they failed to bring him. So never called us and said, we're not bringing him. And then just showed up and didn't have him. And so, again, I don't think that's by coincidence. I think he would have probably looked really bad if he had testified. My feeling is why they left him at home. They felt it's probably smarter leaving back at the institution. So that's what they did.
Well, they didn't want the transparency.
That's what it looks like to me, Bob.
Well,
and I will say this, Bob. Every witness was super, super polite. Now, the AG, the guy they sent over, super good guy, seems nice. I didn't agree probably with half what that guy said. I don't agree with him. Give you an example. He said that when an inmate and an officer or an employee have sex, it's like statutory. I broke out the daggum, statute on rape. And in the definition of rape, it's right there that if you supervise people, if you're over them, whether in federal, correction, state, whatever, if you have sex with them, it's constituted rape. It ain't close to statutory. It ain't nothing like that. It is out and out rape, and it says it straight there in the definition. And so I disagree with him. I understand what he's saying is a lot of times this stuff's consensual between the two. But the thing about it is, Bob, you can't have consensual sex with an inmate. and everybody knows that.
Well, I think he said several things there. I quite frankly, I didn't even know what he's talking about like most of the time.
Well, when he says that you can't get a rape conviction on a confession. Well, Bob, I'm sitting there beside David Harden. I've got 30-something years. He's got 30-something years in confession, and we're sitting there talking, going, hey, generally a confession gets you there. I mean, you know, if I walk in and say, hey, I raped so-and-so, are we going to do absolutely nothing? And again, here's what I'm trying to tell the Department of Corrections, Bob. They do not have that authority to make that conclusion. They should be turning over that information to a district attorney. And if the district attorney says we don't have a case, then so be it. You don't have a case. But you don't go in and tell people, well, if you'll just resign, we won't pursue this. That's not appropriate. Because if they confess, or if you have evidence to show that they did have sex with an inmate, it's rape, and you can't do that. And the other problem is, are they looking for other, evidence, other witnesses that would corroborate this? And they're saying, well, it's hard to find that in prison. Well, Bob, I took the ones that I was given. I never went out. You know this. I mean, people were calling you, people were calling me. And again, we were able to confirm several of these sitting on our hiney right there at the Capitol doing nothing. And so again, I think it's pretty interesting when I can have attorneys confirm it, when I can have, and in the case where the attorney confirmed it, it's a child custody case. That tells you there's a lot of people on the other side that probably have information. Did you ever go talk to them? Why can I find out that that's going on? Why can I call the lawyer up and get a written statement saying, yeah, this happened? And again, we didn't
explain that, the lawyer, what happened on that situation.
Well, here's the deal, Bob. We had got some information that this officer had admitted having sex with the inmate. We were told that now the guy's actually living with the inmate. Now, we've never confirmed that, but we were told that there was a child custody between him and another correctional officer. And so what we did, we pulled that up, looked it up, found out who the lawyers were, called the lawyers because we'd heard this man come out in the actual child custody case. And guess what? It had. And again, here's this lawyer that says, well, the OIG admitted that this guy had said that he had had sex with the inmate, but it was consensual, so we can't charge him. Again, I just told you the law says you can't have consensual sex. So again, saying you can't charge him is a lie, and you should charge him.
Wouldn't OIG agent, would he not know that? He's the one that directs all three of them through him.
They know that. And again, Bob, I will tell you, since we started there, when we started, oh, this is an absolute lie. This is an absolute lie. Now, if you hear what's being said, well, you can't get there by just a confession. Well, before we didn't even have the confessions. Now we're being told, well, yeah, they're admitting it, but you can't win with it. Well, here's the deal. Are you turning that over to a district attorney and letting them make that conclusion? And then are you getting off your butt? And in this one case that we had testified Monday, we had a guy from Arkansas come in and testify. He was sent down there to get letters, which tells you they already knew that he had the letters, or the female inmate had the letters, and that they told him to go down there and find letters that were sexual in nature, proving that this officer and inmate having an affair. The guy goes up and confesses. He tells this officer that he had admitted and confessed. So you have written documentation and you have the guy confessing. What else I've been in the criminal justice business a long time, Bob. You know, that gets you there. I mean, that's what we like to call it in criminal justice business. That's what we call a slam dunk, grand slam case. And again, was it filed? They said we filed one case, and the DA refused to file it. You know, that they turned it into the DA. Here's the deal, Bob. I had no problem with that.
Yeah, but we don't know which one it was.
That's appropriate process. Yeah, we don't know which one it was. And again, but Bob, we're saying here's 13 cases involving 6, 7 officers. We have a sexual assault case that we know there was some evidence on, apparently some phone, camera stuff, and all that. We're told. And again, these people are allowed to resign. And again, in one case, our witness on that couldn't make it. I think her kid had a wreck or something. But in that case, what they've told me is that this officer basically stalked her, went after her own kid, and now he's supposedly driving a bus. Again, if we have this kind of evidence, should we not do something to prevent these people from getting those kind of jobs and going back to work? One of the testimonies that we had was that an officer was allowed to resign under investigation of sexual allegations, went back to work for the department at McAllister, and then shortly went back to work at Eddie Warrior. So he's right back. So here he is having these kind of allegations, resigns, goes right back to work for the department, goes right back up there. And that was one of the ones in our book that ended up resigning again, is my understanding. So, we had an officer say, or not officer, an inmate say that she turned in a PREA, never called. The other inmate that was going to come said she turned in a PREA, never got called back. So again, PREA is supposed to call these people back. It's required. We're seeing that they're not. And then they're coming in saying, we're number one in PREA. Well, how are you number one in PREA if I'm barely even looking, and every case I've got is you didn't work this one, you didn't call this one back. Oh, by the way, the person she called in ended up, she says they got caught in the shoe having sex with the inmate and resigned. Again, that's one we'd have to investigate, but there's another report. And Bob, I can tell you, since we come out Monday, I've got 2 people right now that say they got way more information. I got a third person call me and was telling me, well, hey, y'all's looking at the women's institution. You ought to be looking at the men's institution, because a lot of these female officers are having sex with male officers, and they're doing absolutely the same thing.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Well, Bob, I know several that have been allowed to resign and not given, again, I didn't know at the time, did they turn it into the DA or not turn it into the DA?
But this all started back when the doctor turned in PREA and they wouldn't do anything about it.
Well, and that's the deal. Her testimony, she turned this in and they're doing absolutely nothing. She has a duty, and we showed that, Bob. We showed that if she does not turn that in, she's breaking the law, as well as these other investigators or any other person in that chain. If they know all this is going on and they're doing absolutely nothing, they're not only setting themselves up for civil liability, but they're setting themselves up for criminal liability. And so, again, she has a duty to do it. She reported it. She had already reported it. And again, look where it landed her. And that was the other part of the investigation. We're not just looking at, are these rapes occurring? Are they being covered up, improperly investigated, all of that? What we're saying is that we should have a whistleblower process that protects all employees, not just DOC, all employees.
Right.
Again, I got as much coming in on DHS stuff as I got DOC. The thing about it is, here is a person who reports serious accusations that she's required under law to report. They fire her. They do multiple investigations, and some of the most ignorant, I'm trying to quit cussing, Bob, but I can almost cuss right here. Let me just say ignorant ass investigations that you ever heard of. And they fire her because a person had a dream and she didn't report the dream. Now, you want to talk about sad. But here's the deal. She filed whistleblower, correct. She filed 2 of them through OMES. OMES come and testified absolutely, gave us an affidavit, said she filed them, they were processed through them, they sent them to the AG. The AG testified that absolutely they got sent over there and nobody did anything. So what we saw was a whistleblower come forward, rape allegations, and nothing was done. No protocol. They had some protocol followed, but the ball got dropped. Now, who's responsible? And then what do after we find out, hey, y'all didn't do anything here? So I made a whole packet and said, hey, how about checking this out? Here's another place where I get in an argument. Or not, like I say, I appreciate the AG sending people over, cooperating, but again, there's nothing to argue about if I say, well, wouldn't the primary witness be the whistleblower? And he says, well, I don't think so. Well, how would you not think so? And he said, well, in these rapes, that was secondhand and all that. And I said, yeah, but in the whistleblower, and the whistleblower is making the allegations, but the whistleblower, how are you going to see if the whistleblower was violated? How are you going to see if the information is true if you never talk to the whistleblower and you never talk to any of the witnesses supplied by the whistleblower to prove that they're doing this, and you never talk to any of the witnesses supplied by the chairman of corrections? So you never talked to anybody. So what you did, you went over there and you talked to DOC, who are the ones being accused of covering up. And you went over and said, did y'all cover this up? And they said, why, no, come on, man. Here's some paperwork. And guess what? That's what they said was sufficient. It looks like sufficient. Well, if you don't look anywhere else, I guess maybe it does, And again, that's the question. Now, he did also say that if we supplied ample new evidence, that he would look back into it. And he wrote that in that letter. And again, I think that guy admitted that and said that as much. And Bob, I can't see how anybody could have sat through that hearing Monday and say, we supplied tons of evidence, whether it's testimony, documentation. Everybody who testified, I had multiple documentation to prove what they were saying was correct.
In DOC, with a reporter for Daily Oklahoman, they said some regular derogatory things about you.
Yeah, they said I misrepresent the truth, which I lie. They said I exaggerate. You know what? I might, when I'm telling a little fishing story, I might say the fish is a little bigger, Bob. The deer may have a little bit bigger horn, but on these issues, I'm not exaggerating. And again, they said I had no evidence. I think we spanked them the other day and said, now who's over exaggerating? Who's misrepresenting? And again, if you ain't misrepresenting, why do you not bring your key witness who investigated all this? I mean, number one key witness that's needed, and y'all leave him at home. And again, you brought your lawyer, who's about the rudest, most unprofessional person, I think, that showed up that day. And I think everybody would agree. I think all the reporters, I think everybody in the room agreed that she was totally unprofessional and really looked really sad. She looked really sad, Bob.
Well, I know she kept trying to correct you in what you were saying.
Well, Bob, here's what's funny. She sits down and immediately upon sitting down, I'm not going to answer any of your questions. And my deal, well, you're not going to answer that y'all terminated the employee? It's an ongoing investigation. We're not going to answer. I said, well, I got the letter showing you did, so we really don't need your testimony on that. Did you get beat by the court? Did the court make you hire her back? Did the court say that y'all didn't have any evidence to support you and that you fabricated all this? We're not commenting on an ongoing investigation. Well, they did because I got this and we had her lawyer testify earlier. Did you then make up the 5%? Did you try to fire on another thing that the court said you can't do that? Yeah, they only did that after they lost, Bob. They never made it. In fact, they told her she wasn't 5%. Give her a piece of paper showing her. And I had that, by the way, too.
Yeah.
You ain't 5%. You can go protest your termination. But then when they lose, and check this out, Bob, they had the whole court process to bring that up. Never brought it up. when they got their hiney kicked, oh, she's 5%. We're not going to hire her back. We're not going to follow the court order. We're going to thumb our nose at a court order, and we're going to say we're not going to hire again under this reason. Had to go back to court. Guess what? Won that one. Now they're going, we're not going to hire her back, and we're going to appeal. Well, now here you got this doctor having to fight a $500 million industry with lawyers on. You want to talk about wrong. And they've lost twice. They know they don't have a case. And Bob, here's what's funny. I won't answer. I won't talk. I will not talk on this investigation. Then I break out the letter that she wrote to the doctor and the lawyer, which says, and Bob, I'm not joking. I read it right there to the record. I read it, and it says, well, since you've been terminated, we have now found, we have now discovered. So we've now discovered serious information that would be a security risk for inmates and staff. Well, here's the deal. Since means we didn't have it before. We terminated you on nothing, which the court found. So since then, we've now discovered. Discovered means it was hid and we had to find it. That's what discovered means. So what did you do? You went in there, you dug up, you tried to find something. And now we found this serious problem, because it must be really serious because they didn't know about it before. So how serious can it be? And now she's some kind of security risk. I don't know, Bob, but if you're reporting rapes, I'd think that's more safe, And again, rapes going on in the prison puts the prison at risk, because guess what? They're trading tobacco, they're trading drugs, they're doing all of this kind of stuff. It's a security breach, it's a security risk. Inmates are at risk, staff at risk. So you would think a psychologist coming forward and reporting that would be, and especially, here's what's funny, Bob. It come out during that hearing. I asked her, I don't know if you remember this. I asked her, I said, is this the first time that you have actually turned in a rape and actually it was found that DOC was covered this up? She goes, yes, I've never done that before. I said, what about this case of Chris Red Eagle, I think is what the guy's name? And she said, I forgot about that. Yes, I was involved in that. And again, one of the things I said, well, there's currently a lawsuit. So here's this DOC general counsel, and she was on me, Bob, when I was reading that letter that I just talked about. You're misrepresenting that. And I'm like, ma'am, I'm reading it straight from the letter. I'm reading it. I'll read it again. I ain't misrepresenting it. Oh, she was getting ugly. She was getting rude. And then she wouldn't ever answer any of the questions. So then we get on this Chris Red Eagle, and we say that there's a lawsuit filed, and we had somebody bring us a note, say the lawsuit had been settled. And she said, that's not true. That's not true. We did not get anything settled against us. Well, she's about halfway telling the truth right there, Bob. I found out. I didn't understand what she was talking about, because she just was so rude, and the way she presented was so bad, you couldn't tell what she's saying. No wonder they're losing all their cases. But the thing about it is what she was saying, and here's the deal. She got on me bad, saying I was lying. And what's funny, why I'm talking, and I dismissed her as a witness, and somebody had brought me up to show that there was actual judgment in court for the inmate who sued the guy and won. Now, what she's saying is that she didn't get to sue DOC, that the court didn't find DOC at fault. How in the world that happened? But here's the thing. So what she was trying to say very poorly, rudely, and she's just, wow. What she's trying to say is that DOC wasn't. If she'd have been halfway pleasant, we could have got that and could have all agreed, because that didn't say that. The judgment said it was against the individual. And so, again, I have no problem telling the truth, but she was saying, oh, no, it's a lie, that's a lie. And then we bring up the actual judgment. So, no, we weren't lying. We were telling the truth. And then she starts screaming, and I had to say, hey, you're no longer a witness. You didn't want to talk, just shut up. And man, she just kept on, and I had to get the gavel and gavel her down. Shut up. You're not recognized. And that, I mean, this is supposed to be, this is your lawyer for DOC. And again, we had not one problem with any other witness. We had people, AGs. And again, me and the AG went back and forth disagreeing, but very pleasantly. And in fact, in one part where I disagreed with him, I got up and called our lawyer over and said, he right or I'm right? And she said, JJ, he's right. And I said, boy, I hate that. And I got up and said, you know what? I hate to admit it, but here I am. I'm wrong. And I admitted it straight out in public, setting that, hey, I can be wrong. There ain't no shame in being wrong, Bob. We're trying to get to.
All we were looking for was the truth. If we could be wrong, we're wrong.
The truth. And if we're wrong, I'll come right out and admit it. But I can tell you this, when you won't bring your witness, and when your other witness is the rudest and sits there and says stuff, I ain't answering stuff that everybody already knows, and then sits there and accuse you of making something up that she wrote, and you read it right into record, and then she gets, obviously, I mean, you talk about most unprofessional person I've ever seen. And so again, and then telling me I'm sitting there lying, and then I get the proof to show I'm not lying, court order, what are you going to say? Then you're going to get mad at me, and you're going to start screaming at me? Well, guess what? I got no use. And that's what we seen. So here's the deal, Bob. They wouldn't acknowledge me back. And again, what this shows is that they have no use for any authority over them. They're not going to have authority by the court. They're going to ignore the court. They're going to put their employee in a terrible position. They're going to write a letter saying, we'll never, if the courts make us, we will, but we'll never hire her back. Well, if she goes back, they'll just go after her again.
Well, that's their MO.
I mean, they make their position. Read the letter 100% clear. We ain't going to follow the court. The court means nothing to us. We are supposed to be a branch of the government. We are supposed to be the law enforcement branch of the government that protects inmates and officers and make sure that we keep inmates in prison, that they don't escape, they don't get on the public. That's who they are. But guess what? The courts mean nothing to them. They don't care about the court and the authority of the court. And I'll tell you another thing. The government means nothing to them because that committee has subpoena power. That committee is elected officials that are to oversee. That's what our job is. Bob, what we were doing Monday ought to be that ought to be that's government. If you want to see government run, that's government. And guess what? They said, we're not even calling you back. We don't even have to call you back. And when they brought people, we're not bringing the people you asked. We'll bring the guy we want to bring, not the guy you want to bring. And the guy they brought he don't have anything to say. He didn't investigate it. He wasn't the one that done all this. Guess what? He wasn't the one that commented to the AG. So we have this letter saying, James Hunter said this, James Hunter said this. James Hunter's the guy that investigates all these. Why would I want some guy who don't know anything about that? I want James Hunter. He's the one that did the investigation. He's the one that wrote to the AG. So he can talk to the AG. He can do all these investigations. But he can't come to our hearing to try to determine, is this valid? Do we need to check on this? And Bob, I can tell you what, since this hearing, I've got calls from prisons. I've got 2 or 3 people that I've got to get back to that say they have more information on what we're talking about. So I think that we're just kind of really just the tip of the iceberg, Bob. I think that, and again, I'm going to be very systematic. If they think that I'm stopping here, again, I'm not trying to get an untruth. So when people tell me, I think if anything got proven Monday is that if you tell me something, I'm going to go say, how do you document it? How do you prove this? How can I believe this? And I think every witness we had, and even the witnesses like the one I'm talking about, their general counsel, she was rude. She was not in favor for us, obviously. But guess what? When I asked her a question, did you terminate the employee? Even though she wouldn't answer it, we got the proof. Did you lose in court? She wouldn't answer it. We got the proof. Did you refuse to hire? Guess what? We got the proof. Did you tell her that she was not a 5%? We got the proof. Did you not hire because now you claim after you got your rear kicked that she was 5%? What? You want to talk about lousy. You want to talk about just look terrible, thumb in your nose at the court saying, we don't care what y'all say. We'll just make up something else. And you want to talk about looking like you're making something up. Guess what? So here we have a person who goes and files the whistleblower and files it twice. And then we see the DOC fire her without cause, according to the court. And then we see them pull a sham and get caught again. Again, we see that by the court. And so again, Bob, does it look like whistleblower violated? I don't know. It looks like it to me.
Right. Well, you know, they had lost two court cases just recently. One for $1,200,000, I think.
Bob, and you know, we looked all that information up, and stupid me forgot to put all that in there. And we had that lawsuit. We had a person named York filed a lawsuit on a sexual deal, how they didn't investigate it correctly, and then tried to make her the bad guy. And I think she's won that. We've got this Chris Eagle lawsuit that we should have had ready. We did bring that one in. But the case you're talking about is not sexual, but it just shows their willingness to cover everything up.
Well, that's what got them in trouble too. In that one is where they tried to cover it up. That was settled for like $1,200,000. That was where a guy had a medical problem.
Yeah, I think it was his appendix ruptured or something like that.
And they wouldn't do anything about it. And then they tried to cover it up after it happened.
Yeah, he died from something that shouldn't have cost him his life, an appendix, you know. And he had went to the medical quite a few times, saying that he had all these problems, and they wouldn't look at him. And if I remember the lawsuit, Bob, I do want to say, man, and I do want to say this, Bob. I have looked at a mountain of stuff, and tried to systematically put it in. So here's what this guy's going to testify. Here's evidence. Here's what this person testified. Here's evidence. And I think we did a pretty decent job of doing, you know, systematically just busting their case up and saying, you know, they go out and say, I have no evidence. Well, what did they bring, Bob?
Nothing.
What did they, you know, the AG said, well, I looked at their records. Well, then why don't you bring your records? I asked you to come with your records. I want to know who you talked to. I want to publicly say, if you did a great job, then guess what? Okay, come right up here and let's talk about. We didn't use names the other day. We could have worked with them to say case 1, case 2, case 3. We redacted names from people who sent us informations. We had multiple. And again, Bob, you know, I think some of the saddest commentary is that you have that many people will write in and say that they have knowledge of rapes being covered up. One of them testified that they've actually sat in the room and watched them work somebody to change their testimony to get them to say they did not see stuff and that they had it on video. So here's the deal again, what we're talking about, confession alone. Nope. But they got a video and they get them to change their testimony. Witnesses change their testimony and ignore the video. So we had a statement like that. We had another statement of a person. Almost everything that we were saying, they were testifying or they sent an email in saying, and again, Bob, what people need to understand, we received that email, I don't know, what, 6 months ago, probably. Yeah. You received that email a long time ago. And how would anybody know? We didn't even know what we would be presenting at the time, they wrote this email. And again, one of the witnesses we had from Arkansas, she mentions him in there and didn't even know his name. Did she know that we were going to be talking about the warden being drunk? She mentions that she got cussed out by him, threatened by him, and that he appeared intoxicated, and then other evidence, Listerine bottles all over empty. She talked about 4 of the people that we are saying was the rape issues, the officers involved in these rapes. So of the 6 or 7 that was turned in, she hits the same 4 out of 6 or 7. You know what I'm saying? Saying, I have knowledge, this. Again, I don't know all the knowledge she has, but here we have an email from an employee who's scared to come forward. And again,
well, here's what came out, in my opinion. Here's what came out in the whole situation is finding out how bad they treat people.
Bob, I can tell you this, that our intention and what I said when we started was our intention was to prove that Oklahoma does not have a whistleblowers
system
act. Now they can call, we'd say we got a whistleblowers act. That's horse crap. There is no system. There is no accountability. And when they drop it, we proved it. You dropped it. You never even looked into it. I put a package together and put it right back on your lap. You never looked into it again. You never looked into it has, Oklahoma has the department violated the Whistleblower Act, and we presented evidence after evidence after evidence that they had credible evidence that these rapes, we have credible evidence to show that the rapes are a concern, a valid concern. Are they investigating properly? You couldn't watch that daggum hearing and walk away going, oh, I'm confident they're doing a great job. We produced witness after witness, email after email, showing no, they're not. That there's more witnesses out there, and that the way they treat people may be a big factor in it. But Bob, what really come out of that shocked me, and here's the deal. I know you had reporters talk to you, and I had reporters talk to me. Bob, I couldn't even the next day. All I did was sit and talk to reporters all day. And the thing that just blew my mind was that they were looking into making people work 16 hours back to back to back. They couldn't believe that was going on, and it's against the law and that they're still doing it. They could not believe that they would force people to go to another place 4 hours away with a pregnant wife and the issues of medical issues, and they couldn't believe that. Or that they call them up and say, you come in this weekend, your day's off, and we don't care that nobody notified you, you get in here. And they couldn't believe that an officer could be sexually assaulted and be accused of initiating herself and never looked into. Testimony after testimony about things like that going on. Those were the issues that I was surprised that the media had lots of questions about.
Okay, we've been told that from officers that they are intimidating people to go to Hinton or go to work. They're saying, "Oh, we never did anything. This is all voluntary." Well, according to what's happening at one of our prisons, it's not voluntary. It's the fact. But they told him, the director told him one day in an interview on the over the, I guess it's a Facebook deal or whatever it is. He does interviews, talks about different things. He said that he didn't say this, but the prison told the officers that everyone that is unable to go to Hinton was forced to write an incident report on why they can't go. At the same time, the director said you don't have to. You're not being forced. You're not going to be. That's not going to happen. It's all voluntary. It never was voluntary. Then what happens? You know what happened next? Today, it comes back and says, everybody at Jackie Brannon, we're not going to use you at Hinton. So I don't know if the left hand did what the right hand's doing, but he was saying one thing and they were doing something else.
Well, you know, I think that's big kudos for those people there at Jackie Brandon. I mean, apparently enough of them have raised enough cane that
They stood
Jackie
out. They stood up for themselves.
Yeah, I mean that's what it appears to me. I don't know that, but how is it you're going to cut that one prison out and require everybody else? Bob, I will tell you something that has happened since Monday. I have been getting calls after calls after calls, not only on rape, but on this kind of stuff. I got an email from a probation place, and it says during an agency-wide call with the director yesterday, so I guess that's on his Facebook deal. He said that Great Plains was up and running in good condition, and nobody would be forced to work there. Not 10 minutes after the call was over, we got an email with a list of our new PMP employees on it to start working at Hinton Monday, July 31st for 2 weeks, 12-hour shifts working in laundry. And again, this guy pretty much says, you know, he understands they're shorthanded. He goes on to talk about, you know, that they're shorthanded, but then, you know, it's not right. And he talks about, let me see, we had to put up an argument to keep our staff locally, also stating you are giving people with family 4 days notice to go halfway across the state. And the email came today stating it will be voluntary and 10-hour shifts. We're tired of arguing with headquarters and feeling like we are an afterthought. Here are some examples. And he said, our pay slips were incorrect as a lot of officers were not paid 4th of July. So that's an issue. He continues to create 100,000 per year jobs at headquarters. So they're not happy looking at headquarters with all of these new pay, bringing people over from OMES that they talk about. He talks about that our cleat training is not getting entered in a timely manner. They took our cars without replacements. Some of them are really bad. Now we're putting 15 to 2,000 miles per month on our own cars. Since we are paid bi-weekly, we ask about an 80-hour cycle, no reply. And I know that's been a big issue with them because I've got several. So again, Bob, you know, we're not making these things up. I mean, I'm sitting here reading. I'm not going to give their names because they fear retaliation, and they're asking me not to share that name. Bob, and I can pull this up. Let me just pull up right here and see if I can find this. But got big issues. So I was told right here that a lot of the people at Mabel Bassett, I think, in the nursing, so in the medical staff, apparently a bunch of them had a walkout and just quit is what I'm being told. Now I don't know whether that's true, Bob, or not, but people are having to go out of their facilities. You're already short medical. That's another place we're short. And now they're having to fill in that slot. You know, this is talking about how a big fiasco starts with cars and who's going to take what car trying to go to fill these facility jobs. So one's going to Dick Connors, I think. One's going to Great Plains, I guess. And then somebody's going to Mabel Bassett. And that there's a big, you know, to do because one of the top level people don't want to give him his car to go and gets in a big cuss fight with all of them and drops F-bomb on all of them. It's what I'm being told. Now, again, that's what I'm being told. Another one, Bob, let me see if I can find this. Another email that I've got, let me see. So apparently some staff are being put on call so that they have to have an on-call day. So on their day off, ain't their day off. They have to be on call. And if they call, they got to come in. Are they being paid? Because that's the deal. These people aren't griping on that. They're just feeling like they ought to be paid on that. And guess what? I don't disagree with them. You know, I understand we're shorthanded, but if you're going to have people be on call, pay them.
Well, the director goes on and said, we got 16 new people we just brought in, but he
Well,
doesn't
Bob,
talk about how many just left.
hey, I had a reporter the other day call me on the private prison, and they were trying to understand. Um, so they had gotten some records showing how many people hired and how many people left. And what I told them, I said, here's what's funny. I said, go pull 3 months of them, and they probably won't even jive because nobody holds them accountable. So they don't even look to see if their paperwork jives from month to month. And sure enough, this one didn't after we pulled it, if I remember correctly. I've got a lot of stuff going on, Bob, so I won't swear to that. But I do know this when we were looking at, and I'm pretty certain I'm right on that. But when we were looking at it, they had, in this 1 month, they had hired 10, but they lost 20, 3 to, I think, retirement, 17 to, just, I forget, terminations, whether it was be write-ups or whatever, fired. But, when you hire 10, but you lose 20, that's going backwards. Now, we may be hiring 16, but what are we moving? Where, you know what I'm saying? So that's a number that's a good number. I'm glad we are hiring 16. I'm glad we're trying to.
Well, we know from the past all 16 of them not going to last.
Well, Bob, that's the question. The question is, okay, how many left? We need transparent numbers. And again, they used to be great on this. Man, every month they used to put out, here's how many people's working, here's how many women we have, here's how many men, here's how many blacks, here's how many whites, how many Indians. They did it for the inmate population. They did it for the employee population. You could see, are there appropriate number of black officers to black inmates, et cetera, et cetera. You can look at all of this kind of information that is great to know that we as the public ought to know, especially we as legislators ought to know, hey, today, guess what? And again, I can't write over and say, would you come and have this and even get a response. In the times past that I've tried to get those numbers, I've been called in governor's staff, speaker's staff to say that I had lost my mind, out of control, and had to fight them in the media. They went out and told the media I'd lost my mind. And again, and after we got proved right, Humphrey didn't have nothing to do with that. Humphrey didn't do that. We did that,
Yeah.
Wow.
Did it on our own.
Yeah. I mean, here's the deal, Bob. We should have a system where you can pull that up. I shouldn't even have to call them. They should have that on their webpage. I'd be able to pull up and see, okay, how many people left this month? How many people did you hire this month? How many people left this month? How many do you have overall? That should be something that would be, any business would have that automatically. That's a number you'd want to have. Any financially sound group should want to have that and should be able to supply that. And again,
well, JJ, now I've heard, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but there is a number of people who's going to collect money through statewide, try to do a class action lawsuit. They're putting their lives at danger, which is so dangerous that the people we have short-handed, and that it's just terrible what's happened here, how this has been mismanaged the last 9 months, 10 months.
Bob, I'm hearing multiple that there may be two of that kind of thing going on, that a group may file a lawsuit. I don't know that would be a class action. It's just a handful of people going to get together and sue. I'm hearing possible class action on what you're talking about. Bob, again, one of the things that I would tell you, I tend to just look at, and again, if I can't get the numbers so that I can sit right there and find how I can confirm, I don't believe anything. Bob, you know this, and me and you are good friends. I mean, we're good friends. But if you give me something, I'm going to say, Bob, how are you going to verify that?
Right.
JJ, this, that. Well, Bob, I know you're probably telling the truth. Maybe you are. Maybe you believe it. I know that. But it don't matter what you believe. It don't matter what I believe. How are we going to verify? Now, if I hold myself and I hold you to that accountability, guess what? I'm holding them to the same accountability, Because how many times have I been given numbers that have been wrong, false, whatever? Guess what? I want to be able to verify. Now, one of the things I look at, Bob, is just what we call something that's missing out of this whole equation anymore on government, but it's called old common sense. So let me give you an example of common sense. If you're telling me we're moving greatly and everything's good, everything's great, but I'm getting called from P&P saying, guess what? We're going to have to go and, go out here. And I'm getting called.
Well, that's like for Hinton. Hinton, they said, everything's good.
Bob, I'm getting called from some of their administrative positions that are having to go out there. I'm being told administration, like maybe their audit team or one of those, is having to work the kitchen. I will say
that's another thing.
I will say this, Bob. I want to kudos to you kitchen guys that are audit team. And I know me and you've had an argument about I like Tommy Sharp. And I'm told that Tommy Sharp's kind of over this. And I am being told that their food is actually improved and that they're doing a pretty decent job on food. So let me say,
I'm told they're not health. They don't have a health license to be food servers.
Well, now that could be true. Bob, I wouldn't doubt that wouldn't be.
But I just told just the opposite, that the food is not very good. And that's what's causing a lot of trouble and a lot of problems. And you're going to have a lot of problems if the food's not even good.
Bob, I was being told that as well. I did hear that as well. But I have heard that it has improved under this group. And again, one of the things that I do like is getting that stinking administration out and actually getting them to work in the prison. So, while I'm going to gripe about what is wrong, I am going to say if they do something right, I'm going to brag about that. And I like that they're using their overpaid administration that doesn't do anything to go down there and get involved in that. But I do know they're making some people mad there because they're having to pull out of this and go work in that prison. And the big issue with everybody, Bob, I hear less griping about having to work there than just having to go 4 hours away, be away from my family, be away from the business that I've got, be away from. That's the gripe. It's not the work.
Everybody that I've talked to about it said it's a disaster there. And then I had somebody with DOC call and tell me how great it was doing. We got people that want to go to work there. They want to be transferred there. It's a great system. There's no problems. Everything's going great. But although when people come back, they tell a different story.
Well, Bob, here's the thing. When you've got a place that you have electrical problems, you have door problems, you have all of these problems. If you were the director and you called me up and said, Humphrey, I want you to make this work. Well, dadgum, if you ain't got kitchen staff, if your building is not, you're having to have contractors work on the building, and you send some of the most difficult inmates. So I got some of the most difficult inmates, don't have staff, don't have kitchen staff. Wow. Don't have your doors working. And again, I think they are trying to get this thing. I think they're trying to work on it. But damn, I mean, you started off, who could do that? You know what I'm saying? That's not a plan.
Well, the good side of it is, I have to give them kudos for this. They transferred all those inmates, got them in there without an incident. Not one person was stabbed, not one person, anything else. So that's a heck of a deal they did there.
Right.
But JJ, we're going to have to shut her down and put your last words in.
We just got started, Bob.
Seems like it. We've been over here an hour. So I appreciate the work you've done. And you guys, anybody has any questions, give us a call, and we'll listen to you. May not always know the answer, but we'll listen and we'll find out the answer.
Well, Bob, I do want to say this before we go. Hinton was a move that needed to happen. So I don't disagree with them. I think that it was short term. I think they should have done some work setting that up. I think that the person in charge of that has been given a massive, almost impossible, deal. And so again, I just wish them the best on it. But at the same time, what we are just relating the calls that we're getting.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, I think you have a good weekend.
You too, Bob.
We'll talk to you later. Thank you.